Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Between Two Brokers. Today, we have Brian Wells with Coastal Creek Design. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Please tell everybody what Coastal Creek Design does.
We are a full-service architectural firm that also has structural engineers that are in the same office. So we're the only firm that I'm aware of that has a full staff of architects and engineers working together every day.
Okay, but you're doing residential construction, renovations, additions, and new builds.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So tell us about your background and how you wound up with this firm.
So after college, I was an Army officer in Savannah. I moved up to Charleston, and I built houses full-time for about 3 years. So I worked for John Wheeland Homes in Dunes West, building high-end houses, and then I worked for a custom builder, Old Park, Ion, and doing houses in the early 2000s, and just felt like that wasn't not really the right career path for me. So I went back to being an engineer with the Navy, and I got my professional engineer license when I was doing that, and my friends that were home builders said, you know, you need to do some of these plans for us. So in Charleston, everything has to have an architectural set and a structural set. So I started doing the structural drawings, and just it was a word of mouth thing, and I started doing a lot on the side, and that was kind of leading up to the recession. So I'd say from 2003 to 2009, it was kind of like honing my craft and then taking a little bit of a break during the recession. Mm-hmm. And then in 2011, when things started coming back, I started getting really busy. So at that point, I was working full-time for the Corps of Engineers, and I would work 40 hours there, and I'd work 40 hours weekends and nights just doing these drawings. And I figured out that I felt like I was a little bit better than other guys because I had spent so much time as a builder. I really understood like the practicality side of it and also like the cost side of it. So as I started getting busy, I would just start doubling my prices, and I would double it, and I never lost any customers. So eventually I was kind of charging double of what the other structural engineers would charge, but I was staying busy because the customers knew that if they hired me, I would save them time because I always got it done in 3 weeks or less, and I would actually save them money in construction costs because I was generally like more efficient with what I was doing. So,
can you explain that? So we always say you get what you pay for, and you know, like hiring an interior designer to pick the tile that looks good versus, you know, whatever, to get the look you want. Can you explain how your expertise in construction background wound up paying for yourself and then saving them money?
Yeah, so just like a typical fee in 2016 was probably like most guys were charging like $6,000 for a new set of plans, and I would generally charge like $10,000, $12,000, and you know that's like a $6,000 difference. But because I didn't have a tremendous amount of steel and I was very efficient in my designs, like they would easily save that in their framing package or in just less piers or whatever the thing was, and then the responsiveness of always calling somebody back and always writing the letter right away, like people just realized over time it was worth it.
Yeah, it's a good customer experience. And then also time is money, you know, when you're waiting on this stuff.
Yeah, and that's part of it. Like they would go through this process with the architect that would generally last like 6 to 12 months. Mm-hmm. And then they would oftentimes be kind of frustrated with that process. They would get to me and the builder would say, well, Brian can do it in 3 weeks. And they would be kind of like, whatever.
Do you work with the architect at the same time with structural plans, or how does that work?
Well, we do that now in my office, but the traditional method was the customer works with the architect for 6 months or whatever. They get done, they send it to the structural engineer, and then the structural engineer tries to make it work.
Got it.
I heard you say that in Charleston, a structural set is required along with an architectural set. Are there places that do not require both sets of plans?
Yeah, because Charleston is a high hurricane zone, which we all know, but it's also a very high seismic zone. There's a very major fault that runs through Somerville, and the combination of those two is very rare. throughout the country. So Charleston is one of the few places where you always have to have it because of that risk.
Mm-hmm. Do you have earthquake insurance?
Oh, I knew we were going to go here.
No, I don't have earthquake insurance.
Okay,
Yeah.
do you think it's coming? Do you think it's coming?
You mean like
We want you to make a prediction.
Yeah. You mean like mandatory?
No, like an earthquake.
That's not real.
We're just
That's
yeah,
probably
we're
not a
just
good idea.
we're just teasing you. Erin gets nervous about it.
I do. I tell everybody about the seismic line in Somerville.
Yeah.
And she had earthquake insurance for a while. I don't really know many other people who have had that, but
Yeah.
whatever.
I did until it doubled.
Are you generally just kind of nervous about a lot of
I
things?
just like to sleep at night, and there's
So
plenty of other
yes,
things that
the
keep me
answer
up.
is yes.
So yeah,
I let her worry on my behalf.
I do. I worry for everybody. It's my job, and that's why I look like I'm older than I am. Okay, so I am fascinated by your job, period, because I feel like it's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think it became a fascination for me when I've told this story on the podcast before. My husband wanted to put a rooftop hot tub
Yeah.
on the rooftop, right above my bed.
Yeah.
And
I'm kind of familiar with that one.
yeah, well, I remember he emailed you because, we waited a couple years before we put the hot tub
Yeah.
up there just because financial, whatever.
And back
so-
up, Brian did Erin's
Brian did the
plans.
yes,
The
Brian-
structural plans for Erin's.
Yes, for our new
house.
construction. That
And the
we
hot tub has not come into the bedroom.
No, thankfully. So 2 years after we built, we're ready to put the hot tub up there, and of course I'm awake at night about it. I'm like, are we sure? Are we sure that the roof can support this once you put all that water in there? And we've got people up there, and since then we've laid like these Garapa decking
Yeah.
tiles. Those don't weigh nothing.
Yeah.
And so I remember Spence sent you an email that said, my wife is concerned about the hot tub plus all of her fat friends that are going to be over in it. Are you sure that you designed this house that can support it?
Yeah.
So I just
And
think
we
it's-
did. We
you
planned
did.
for it, yeah.
And nothing has happened. I
Yeah,
mean, we've
not
had the
yet.
hot tub up there for 6 or 7 years and
Yeah.
no disasters.
I know there's like a science thing there because actually I don't think it matters because you're in the water and like it all kind of, it's like the equilibrium of the whole
Yeah.
thing.
No,
But like we
look at
also
that.
had an eclipse party up there. We had like
Yeah.
40 people on the rooftop
Yep.
with the hot
Yeah.
tub, with the water in there, and everything was fine.
I wasn't worried.
Yeah.
I was there.
I had enough tequila where I wasn't worried.
Yeah.
But I mean,
We made it really strong.
I know that there's mathematical equations, I'm sure, I don't know, I'm guessing, that, you have to do some kind of whatever amount of support for the weight that you
Right.
predict is going to be up there.
Yeah.
But I mean, what?
We assumed, so on that one, we assumed, so when you do commercial engineering, which we don't do a lot of, you have to assume like 100 pounds per square foot of a live load. That's like a party. So when you're doing a restaurant or something like that, you have to design it to that load. So we designed your deck for that load. So it was like, so you could open a restaurant up there if you wanted to.
Yeah. No, not going to happen. But, I mean, do you ever like doubt yourself? I don't know. It seems like such an important task.
It is.
But it's just math, isn't it?
Yeah, it's math, and we have software that can help us with it. But you have to understand, the math and the theories behind all the software. So there's a lot of like interpretation of what the right thing to do is, and the way I always look at it is like if I was living in that house, would I feel safe?
Yeah.
Based on what I know is the load going to be. And in your case, I could picture a very large party up on that porch. So you probably weren't really appreciating the budget part of what we did up there, but I knew it was going to be safe.
Yeah.
And going back to that time of, 2015, 2016, when you hired me, that was a time when we were double the price of other people. And I know John Frick
Yeah.
had a conversation with you and said, I think it's worth it.
I don't recall that
Yeah,
conversation.
but he did.
I'm glad it happened.
It
I
happened a
can't
lot.
believe she agreed to pay more. That's totally weird. But thank goodness.
I think the other thing that really is interesting to me is about how Charleston, I don't know, hundreds of years ago had a lot more water.
Yeah.
And we've infilled a lot, and we use dredge spoils, and we're building on top of that.
Yeah.
So a couple of questions, like, do you have to do research and figure out that this was infilled land before a house goes in? Do you do the soil testing? Is Charleston sinking?
Yeah. So after a while, you kind of know when you get, I mean, every single time I'm looking at the address and where it is, you kind of know after a while, like where the vulnerable areas are. We have this map of downtown Charleston that shows like the historic thing where it all used to be water and marsh and all that stuff. So when somebody gives me an address, I go to that map a lot and look at it, but now I kind of know, like anything on Wentworth or Bufane or
Where
the Battery,
Joe
it's like that's all just marsh infill stuff. So it's always on piles. I think the more experienced structural engineers that have been around here for a while just kind of know stuff like that. Like areas where you've got a new house that's on a marshfront lot, like you just don't know,
Yeah.
whether, and that's always, so at that point you hire the geotech engineer. He determines how deep the piles need to be to support everything. And then if you're on like a regular lot in a neighborhood, it's always a good idea to do the geotech test, but it's not always required.
Has the most substantial structure that you have ever been responsible for doing been oceanfront or marshfront?
Yeah, I'd say the oceanfront ones are the larger ones, that really you have to take a lot of things into account when you're designing those.
So it seems like every time I drive downtown, there's a new hotel, a new condo
Yeah.
building. I mean, just like massive structures going up. And I always hear about Manhattan sinking.
Here we go.
Here is the peninsula.
Earthquakes and
I mean, weight matters,
Yeah.
right? It's
Well-
not just oceans rising, but is the weight of everything like pushing us down?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
You don't.
I
So I
do a
can
lot of
scratch that
commercial
off my
stuff.
worry list.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about
Can't
that. I
believe
think if
you
it does
worry
happen,
about
it's probably
that.
going to be long after you're gone
yeah.
Yeah.
from around here.
Okay.
I don't know. She eats real healthy.
Yeah, I'm gonna be around a while.
Oh my gosh, I love this.
So, okay. So why do people say like Manhattan's sinking? Does it really have more
I
to
don't-
do with water rising?
I just don't know. I'm not sure.
Brian.
Clickbait.
It's interesting questions, though.
Yeah.
I'm ready for this.
Oh boy.
So the sandier the foundation, is it just like that you just have to go deeper?
Well, I
With the
would
pilings?
first say like 95% of the lots and properties are fine. Like regular shallow footings are fine. It's just areas where it's marshfront or downtown, or like sometimes you have like an old creek bed that got filled in a subdivision. Like those are the kind of things that can cause problems.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I want you to keep going with your questions because I'm totally entertained.
Time out.
I have some like boring business questions that are going to come later, but yours are way better.
Okay.
You were going to ask him about this person on your street.
Oh boy.
I was? The end of the.
I know a lot of people. I probably know them.
Okay. Well, do you feel comfortable talking about hurricanes? Like what you do differently in hurricane zones, or?
I'm glad to talk about that. Yeah.
Okay.
She's back.
Problems specific to Charleston, hurricanes in
Yeah.
particular. Is it just a high wind zone that we have to?
Well, there
step
was a
up our
big
game?
shift in the late 90s around here where the building code itself started really enforcing like hurricane clips and straps and all this standard stuff you see on the buildings around here. When we go look at a house, for renovation addition, if it was built after 2000, you pretty much know that it's got the basics of the hurricane protection within it. It's the stuff that was built before 1995 that's really kind of like squirrely sometimes. And there's a lot of times where we have to go a little beyond what we normally would have to do in another area of the country to retrofit it to make sure that it's safe for the hurricane stuff.
So how many times? So I think one of the most common questions I get when I'm with buyers and they want to renovate something that's older is like, we want to open up this room.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then the contractor's with us like, oh, we're going to have to drop a beam to
Yeah.
support this span or whatever. How often do you come in and say, okay, that's not the only thing we need to do because this house was built before 95 or whatever, but it needs some like hurricane reassurance or something?
Yeah, I mean so this kind of goes back to why we started doing this architectural drawing stuff, is because the traditional method is the the owner hires an architect, they got a builder involved, and then way after all the stuff is done, they can start getting a structural engineer involved. And I always felt like that was a really awful way to do it. And so as we started, I hired my first architect in 2020. And we were just working for developers and builders at the time as we started to kind of grow. And then I'd hire another architect. And once we knew it was going to be better, but once we got into it, we really knew it was better, way better. Because in the old method of getting the architectural plans from the architect, I would see the design and kind of after the fact of they've already been through this couple month thing with the owner. And at that point, I'm kind of faced with, okay, do I go back and say this is kind of dumb, or this is really expensive what you're going to do here? Or do I just say I'm going to make it work with the beams or whatever we have to do to kind of make it work? And for the most part, I had to just kind of make it work because, one, the architects sometimes would get a little insulted with, talking about trying to change their design. And they've already gone through a lot of time with the client, so they're just kind of like, we need to get this thing done. But now, and I do a lot of walkthroughs with clients that we don't even get the job, where I just show them what they need to do. And we talked about the budget, and I'd say a lot of times I'm kind of like the dream squasher when it comes to like early conversations about how much things cost. And but I think that's the best way to serve these clients is to be realistic with them about expectations from the beginning.
I'm a dream squasher too, Brian. I do it every day. We're going to be a great team.
Yeah.
So I want to back up for a second because you basically just highlighted why you started this business, and we have your whole Coastal Creek organization chart in front of us. But basically, you felt like there was a lot of inefficiencies in the process, which of course, yes, all of this makes sense to me. So somebody calls you, and in-house, they have the structural engineer and the architect working in tandem, collaborating with each other to save money. Because that's what I think a lot of people don't realize is you hire an architect, they do what they're going to do, you pay them, and then they come to you and you're like, ugh, this could have been better, unfortunately. Yeah. So with you, they gain efficiency, cost savings, I'm assuming.
Yes, I think so.
Okay. So that's wonderful. So you have I want to talk about your business for a second. So you said you hired your first architect in 2020?
Yeah, 2020.
And you have how many now?
We have we have a total team of about 17 people.
Wow.
And three of those are structural people. So I'm the registered structural engineer. We have another engineer, and then he has a couple people on his team. We have one admin person that kind of runs everything in the office, and then the rest of them are all architects.
Okay. So the client that is going to call you is anybody who is going to consider a new build project, and obviously you have the need for both architectural and structural. Then also the client who is going to do a renovation or addition that is going to clearly require some type of structural stuff. As Erin said, I mean, I've been showing houses in Mount Pleasant all week. Yeah. Every single kitchen needs to be opened up.
Yeah.
And my client's like, I'm just going to blast through this wall. I'm like, oh, no. That is not, and so that is the client that really is going to benefit from working with you because you're going to come in and handle it how?
Yeah, so I'll talk about like a typical process. And I would say that we're doing I'd say 70% renovation additions and 30% new construction right now. Not that, we love new construction stuff, and I think we're really good at it.
But Charleston's running out of land, so probably just don't have the demand.
And it, the real estate part of this, which I love real estate. I'm so happy to be on this podcast with you guys. But and I do my own investing and development stuff too, and we can talk about that later on. But for 20 years, any person that wanted to build a really nice house could go to Daniel Allen Realty and write a $500,000 check and then build the house that they want to build. And that's just gone. It's completely gone. So now, what's going to happen is all these really nice areas in Mount Pleasant, you're going to see regular neighborhoods where the houses just get knocked down and a new house goes up. But in the meantime, the renovation additions is just where we are. And if builders don't embrace where we're going right now, they're going to be sitting on the sidelines waiting for all the lots to show up so they can do new construction. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
So, our process is, usually they'll call me, I see the address, I'll look at the MLS listing that's most recent, even if it's a couple years ago, look at the GIS of the lot generally, and then the FEMA flood map, and then I'll talk to the client about what they want to do. And generally on that call, I will say, well, I think your renovations additions probably like 400 to 600,000. And, at that point there's a pause and either the person has a grasp on reality or they don't. And for the ones that don't have a real grasp on it, it's hard. But what I tell them is that the construction prices now are double what they were in 2019. If they've lived here for a while, then their equity's double what it was in 2019. But that's where the conversation starts. So if it's a good client and they have a reasonable budget, then I'll go to the house, we'll walk around and we'll talk about what they want to do, and I'll talk about some of the things they may not be thinking about, and then we'll talk about our process on site. I'll give them the fee when we're sitting there and just say there's no pressure to say yes, no to this fee. I just want to explain to you why we charge what we charge and all that. And then I'll follow up with a written proposal the same day, and then it's just a matter of whether they hire us at that point. But I think that what we can offer them is very unique in this market because
Definitely.
We're looking at it from the structural standpoint and the creative architectural standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So before we started recording, we were having a little conversation about a house on my street that you dealt with recently, and maybe that their realtor could have intervened a little bit sooner. And I have my own experience with this just because I live on the street, and I saw when it went under contract. First of all, Stacy and I toured it, and it looked like murder scenes had happened in every room. It was disgusting.
Right.
We were like holding our breath. But I saw like a CL100 truck out front, and I'm like, who the fuck is doing a termite inspection on this? It's clearly a tear down. And I think, I'm in the AE zone, but across the street is drastically more sloped, especially towards that end of the cul-de-sac, and I think they might be in a V.
Yeah.
And so that's the worst flood zone for anyone who doesn't know. And so as a reminder, I know we've talked about this before on the podcast, but FEMA has something called the 50% rule, where you cannot add more than 50% of the value of the house, land not included, every 5 years without raising the house to the current flood zone level with the base flood elevation.
Right.
So this was very obviously to 99.9% of the world looking that this is a tear down. But you got called in because someone was actually looking at renovating it.
Right. So they called me, and I did the same thing I always do. I pulled up the Zillow listing, I pulled up the flood map, the GIS, and I looked at it, and I was like, so they're talking about all these things they want to do. They're under contract. They've probably been under contract. They're beyond their due diligence period, and they're getting ready to like close on it. And I was like, this isn't a V zone. Like you can't do what you want to do. It's a brick house. You can't raise this thing and meet the V zone standards. And so luckily they had the conversation with me, before they closed, but I'm sure it was very difficult to try to get out of the contract.
Money.
It was but it goes back to like the real estate agents. Like these are the basic things I would say to a real estate agent: bookmark the site that has the FEMA flood map for Charleston County on your computer. Bookmark the Charleston GIS, and when you get a listing for a client, every single time you need to have them start a survey with topo every single time. I can't even tell you like how surprising it is to me that people list these houses that they know are going to be tear downs or renovation projects and they don't have a survey.
Yeah.
So
I just
could
don't
you guys
even
help
know
me
if
understand?
Yeah. Oh, no.
I don't understand that.
Sometimes the seller is just like, no,
Well, I'd say in that case, the real estate agent may just need to pay for it.
And that's fine, but sometimes it will take 6 weeks, and the seller's like, I'm not
That
waiting.
is the problem.
But at least,
but
at least it's on order.
if you get it on the books, for sure.
It's always going to take six to 8 weeks to do it, but you got to start the process. And like any legitimate buyer that's going to be looking at that house is going to be like, what can I do?
Right.
And there's no way to know that unless you have that survey. So I just plead with real estate agents to please get them to order a
Well,
survey.
and in this particular circumstance, I mean, it was like, I just don't even know how it made it that far.
I don't either.
I saw it come back on the market, and I'm like, yeah, duh.
Yeah.
These people were doing a termite inspection. Like, how stupid. And I blame their agent. I'm sorry. This has got to be an inexperienced agent. I didn't never look to see who it was.
It's not even that. It's the listing agent too, because I think we all owe each other this kind of responsibility where it's, what are your clients going to do with it?
Right.
I mean, the property needed to be marketed as a tear down. And if I'm working with an agent who I can tell is newer, I'm going to say, hey, what do I'm going to know as the listing agent what they're doing and just be like, they can't do that. It's my reputation too.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
And who knows what the conversation was? Maybe the listing agent was saying they can't do, and they were bullheaded and want to do it. I don't know.
That's not the. No.
You know the situation more than I do because I wasn't involved.
Neither real estate agent were aware of the V zone.
Wow. I'm sorry.
So,
but it's important to hire someone with experience.
Yeah,
or
and
common sense.
I would say, if you're not sure, then contact an architect or an engineer or somebody to talk through what's possible.
I think that's inexcusable.
You have to do due diligence. I have a listing right now, or not a listing, but I'm in conversations with people who they're inheriting a house and all of the due diligence that we are doing up front, because I told them we need to arm the buyer with information, because if not, in my opinion, it's a tear down. They think maybe somebody's going to renovate it. They're not. I want my due diligence period with any buyer to be short, because we've already provided them with exactly what you're talking about. We're going to get a survey. We're going to have a contractor come out here and tell you what you can do. We might even have some plans drawn up.
Right.
Just, so you can be the point of contact. But yes, I don't, anyway, whatever. We're not going to just sit here and talk shit about agents.
Anything else you want to say on the importance of a survey? If not, I want to get into cost.
Yeah.
Cost right now for building and cost right now for renovating. What are you seeing?
So here's the way we kind of, when I've got a client we're talking about that's going to do a full gut renovation, where they've got like an 1,800 square foot house, they're going to add 800 square feet, so that's like 2,600 square feet. On the construction side, what we do is a kind of a rounding number, is we just say, let's just take the target square footage and multiply that by 300 to 400. So, if that's like a nice area, full gut renovation, so that'd be like 750,000. And then that may be a little bit higher than what it's going to end up being, but they just need to know from the beginning, it could be this much, depending on the contractor and what you want to do.
What about new construction?
New construction, I think you got to say $400 to $500 a square foot right now. I think that the ability to do it at $350 a square foot is really hard. And now when I'm talking about Sullivan's Island, Isle of Palms, Mount Pleasant, Daniel Island, there's other areas where you can go out to Somerville and other kind of more remote areas where I know you still can do things for $250 a square foot. Mm-hmm. But I think for people to be in reality on new construction, they need to be getting their calculator out and multiplying the number by 400 or 450.
Yeah. So we've just touched on a story about why it's important to hire a realtor with experience and that knows the neighborhood. What do people need to consider before they hire an architect?
Yeah, and I'm not just talking about me here. It's for anybody that's going to hire an architect. I'd say, one, look at the references and call them. I would really, the website's going to show you what their capabilities are, but what you don't know is how responsive they are, how they meet their timelines. Also, if you know some builders, if you can ask the builders about the reputation of the architect, that really helps a lot, because they're going to really shoot straight with you about. And I would just say in general, in the Charleston area right now, there is so much demand for architectural services right now. Yeah. And what I see and what I've seen with the architects I've worked with for the last 15, 20 years is that I think at times they're just too hesitant to hire the next person, and I'm not sure where that really comes from, but I think lots of times they always have where a bunch of work lined up where they don't start the job for 2 or 3 months. So what you really need to know, like when you're talking to them, like when they can actually start, and then a real firm commitment on the timeline of when they think they can get it done.
And for your firm, what is a realistic timeline for someone who's closing on a house this Friday that they're going to tear down and build new? Like to get the full set of plans back?
Well, I think we're unique in that we can do it faster than anybody.
Right.
So I think, in the 3 factors of time, quality, and price, like time and quality, nobody can touch us when it comes to like renovation things. So, and the price, we can figure out if that's fair or not. But we say it's 8 weeks. But a lot of that is dependent on the client. So we have a team that only does as-built plans for us. So if somebody signs a contract with us, within 4 business days, we're out on the site. We have our structural guys underneath doing the pier locations. We have our architectural team there taking pictures. We do a LiDAR walkthrough to help us with just when we're in the client meetings. That LiDAR walkthrough really helps us kind of visualize.
What does LiDAR stand for?
That's like the scanning thing inside. And we've tried to do that directly from there to CAD, but it doesn't really work very well. So we manually draw all of our stuff. We do a drone video during that first site visit, which really helps the client as we're in that first meeting. And then once they contract, a couple of days later we're on site, and then typically like 2 weeks after they sign the contract, they're in our office. We've got the survey with all the setbacks and all that stuff. We've got their drone video, their plans are ready, and we've usually talked to them on the phone to find out what they want to do. So we've got a draft up on the screen. And so we do a lot of drawing in front of people in the office. So we're at the conference table. Joel, my lead architect, is sitting across the table from the clients. There's another girl that's on the computer, a very seasoned architect that's ready to draw. And as they start to come to a consensus, she's going to start to draw it on the screen in front of them. And we do these 90 to 120 minute sessions where we're doing a lot of work face to face.
So 21st century.
I
Brian.
love this. And I also want to just show this to all of our YouTube viewers. Okay, this is why Brian is so successful. Look at this team, guys. And the other thing too is I'm thinking about the collaboration of having so many people put their eyes on things and like listening to the client and stuff like that. That has so much value to me because that's how we work in the office. When I have a problem, I'm bouncing my ideas off of, everybody else in the office to try to figure out how to solve a problem. And I love that. I think you're just going to wind up with a better product.
Well, what we found too is that, all right, so let's say we've gone through that thing, we send draft number 1 out or draft number 2. We're trying to get the clients back in the office for each one of especially the initial couple sessions, because they want to change something, but they're not always thinking about the second and third order effects of those changes. And if we're doing it in front of them on the screen, we can say, well, this isn't going to work, but how about if we slide it this way or whatever? And we have eliminated so much back and forth on emails. Like everybody's just so done with email. And and there's always a way to interpret what they're trying to change and things like that. So we just try to do a lot of it face to face. And I don't know of any other architects that do that regularly.
You are the world's most efficient. I'm sure of it. And I want to talk a little bit about, you said that you love real estate, and I don't know if you said you're developing or you have investments or whatever, but why don't you talk about that?
Yeah. So, I've always had this love for home building. Just because I didn't use that as a profession, I just really love it. So I got my builder's license, and I've always built. My wife and I built our first starter home, and then we built another one in the neighborhood. So in Hibben neighborhood, I think we're on the 6th house that we've built there, and just kind of going from one to the next. And then once I went out on my own in 2016, I did my first spec house on Sullivan's Island, and it was almost like my wife and I kind of figured this out during marriage therapy around the same time, because there was a lot of transition in our lives. But she was frustrated with me because I was going to build a spec house on the side. Now, I was going to hire a builder. I was going to build it myself, but I was involved. And she was frustrated because it was like one more thing that was going to pull me away from her. But then we realized that I didn't really have any hobbies. I didn't fish. I don't golf. That was my hobby, even though it's a work thing. And so I've done a bunch. I usually do one at a time, and higher end things. So I did 2 on Sullivan's. I've done like 5 on Olive Palms. I've got a contract right now on a lot tear down in the Old Village, and we're doing that. And I love it. And the good thing for my regular business is that I really have a very good feel for prices because of that. So it's not just new construction stuff I do, it's high-end renovations, and it just helps me kind of run the business a little bit better.
So I've sat in on a couple of meetings with the Old Village Historic Design Committee as well as BAR, Downtown Historic Charleston, and it's very obvious to me when there's an architect presenting plans for something in either one of those districts that has never done it before, because you, more specifically with Old Village Historic Design Committee, like they are looking for very specific things. And so it's very important to hire an architect that knows the neighborhood and what those design restrictions are and what they're looking for. And I think that has screwed a lot of people when they're trying to just kind of maybe go for the cheaper person or their friend, you know, who's trying to like break into the business. So, I mean, do you have anything to add to?
Yeah, that's certainly like, when we're talking about the right architect to hire, that's one of the most important things. If you got an ARB, you know, depending on who it is, it can be really, really strict. So for my firm, like Linda Balzac is also on the org chart there. She's our architect, and she's got a tremendous amount of experience with the Old Village. She lived there her whole life. She's very respected by the board, and the neighbors. And the neighbors.
She designs very tasteful homes.
So she's been great for that. Joel Adrian started his career in Charleston. He was the head of the Wild Dunes ARB for a long time, and so he understands the process from there. You know, Joel is really good at presenting. Like, it's amazing. I can't believe how like effective he is doing it. You know, we've got a couple going right. We have one right now in Cassique and one in Kiowa, and you know, it, like you said, when they're trying to figure out the right person, you don't always know that when you're sitting down with a person, but you have to figure out a way to verify that they're capable of doing that, because it could really waste you a lot of time and money if you don't have somebody that knows the rules and can present.
Yeah. One other question I have is about condo buildings. Are they all built to commercial standards?
Yes.
Is that, and what year has that always been like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I don't do a lot of commercial structural stuff.
And what is the biggest difference in residential and commercial? Is it materials or the amount of materials used?
It's a lot more steel and concrete and things like that. You know, the commercial jobs, you know, when residential, it's very emotional leading up to the point where you hand those plans off, you kind of hand them to a builder. But commercial is a little more like just
get it done.
It's a little straight up. And then commercial, as an engineer, like you're not really done when it goes to the customer. You have a lot of like shop drawing reviews and site visits and other things you have to do, but you don't necessarily have to do all that stuff in the residential world.
Okay, back to business.
Well, is there anything else that you want to add?
Do you mind if I take a minute to look at that?
No, please do. I want you to talk about your team a little bit. I think it's really incredible. This is the thing that makes you totally stand out.
I'll just talk about my team for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so just talking about my team for a second. So when I first went out, it was just me for about 2 years in an office, and then I hired my first structural engineer in 2016, and his name is Luis, and he's from Ecuador, and he had married somebody from Charleston. She was in graduate school in Ecuador, and they came back to Charleston, and he had a full degree in engineering, and just couldn't really get an interview. Nobody would really take him seriously, I guess. And I interviewed him, and I just asked him to draw for a couple minutes on the computer, and I could tell he's just brilliant. And you know, he now leads my structural branch. Like, all I have to do is kind of just oversee everything and check in with him midway through the designs and check at the end. But he's been great. And then through him, we've been able to hire other South American professionals that probably wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity in our area to be a professional. So the first architect I hired was from Brazil, and then the next one was Brazil, and then one from Ecuador, one from Peru, And they all kind of knew each other. So they had work permits, and there's a lot of people, particularly professionals, are motivated to leave not a great situation down there, come here to America, and then try to continue the professional degree, their career, and sometimes there's not a great amount of opportunities for them. So we've been able to have this kind of, I think it's God bringing all the people to us, but
yeah.
Like just great people that keep coming. And I mean, I'm just amazed at like how hard everybody works and how much they care. And, it's been amazing to see the growth. And then I mentioned to you earlier, we have a team that's in South America. So we'll do a lot of the face-to-face stuff here in Charleston, but then a lot of the details and things like that we can push down to the team that's working remotely, and it just helps us kind of stay free and responsive to the clients.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Well, tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, so the best thing to do is go to our website, coastalcreekdesign.com. You can see all of our examples of our work, and we have a lot of customer testimonials on there. We just really, what I try to do with the website was build it so that when people are considering us, they can really look and see, the legitimacy of our business and the history of the projects that we've done. And then we probably have 15 testimonials of people on there that are video testimonials that talk about working with us and the process and things like that. And, I'd say our ideal customer is somebody that's going to do a pretty major renovation addition. If somebody's going to do a renovation that's less than $100,000, we're probably not the best fit for them. But higher end renovations additions, and I would just say like on our fees, because for like major renovation additions, we're generally like $20,000 to $40,000 for architecture and engineering. So it just kind of depends on the scope within that range of where we're going to be. And on new construction plans, we're normally $10 a heated square foot for architecture and engineering plans. But if it's complicated or if there's a really hard ARB, it could be $12 a heated square foot or $14 a heated square foot. But you have to remember that that's not just the architectural fee, it's the structural fee in that as well. So.
Perfect. Well, Brian, this is wonderful. You definitely have a unique business here. So we're really glad that you came on the podcast and talked about everything that you can offer to clients and one-stop shop and efficiency and the team and everything. So thanks so much for coming on, and thanks everybody for listening. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.